Shall I, Jack, would you like me to crack on?
Sorry. Yeah, let's go.
Perfect. Uh, right, everybody, just so you know, if I'm going too slow and it's boring, you should pull your left earlobe. That's pull your left earlobe. Okay, Darren's already wanting me to speed up.
Which one? Which your left or my left?
Your left. Coolio. Right, should be able to see the screen. Can everyone see that all right?
Yeah.
Wicked. So, yeast wrangling. Pointless follies into transporting and storing brewing yeast. So, yeast wrangling is includes, but it's not limited to yeast smuggling. So, like, why is it? What am I describing this as? Like anything where you are obtaining yeast not from essentially the malt miller in a predetermined, white labs packet. So, why is it useful? If you can get new yeast, so I get yeast you can't otherwise buy in the UK. It's really cheap. So I have a batch of Fuller's yeast from an 1845, which I've done 30 or more batches which has cost me zero money. And then it's unique. So you can kid yourself that because no one else has this yeast, therefore your beer will be better, which is, of course, true and empirically true. So um, before I jump into that, I'm going to do a side note to go. You can buy yeast you can't normally get in the UK. So, what's an example of yeast you can't normally get in the UK? The best one is the new thiolizing yeasts. So, a thiolized yeast, thiols are weird sulfur-containing aroma compounds, and they come from beer, but they also exist in wine. And the human taste system has an incredibly low threshold for these. So you can detect them, I think, from memory, like up down to 5 parts per million, 5 parts per million, which is completely mental. But these thiols don't exist in any ingredient by themselves. Right? They are unlocked, which is a ridiculous marketing expression, I think, by certain types of yeast that will break down other compounds and then create these thiol flavors. And they are kind of the place they sit on the spectrum of flavor is the kind of tropical fruit, rotting papaya. Do you know that like very ultra tropical, so much so that it tastes like a bit like a compost heap in the Maldives kind of tropical. Um, and then Sauvignon Blanc has this naturally. So the Sauvignon Blanc yeast, sorry, has this naturally. And interestingly, the cheating New Zealanders, their wine flavor profile comes from the yeast, not the grapes. Right? All the others, it comes from the grapes and the terroir. So who makes it? Well, Omega Labs are the world leader at the moment, it seems, and they have many genetically modified strains where they have spliced the Sauvignon Blanc genes that convert these thiol precursors into thiols with traditional brewing yeasts. Others are doing it at the moment. Has anyone? You might have noticed that White Labs are releasing papers on it, and they've actually tested all their existing yeasts for thiolizing properties. And astonishingly, some of their existing German lager yeasts already have this property. It's actually 8:30, not 8:40, before I get picked up by James, who I think noticed that. And so then where can you buy it? Because of British and European laws, you can only buy this stuff in America. Is it good? Well, I think yes, right? So I've brewed multiple beers with it, got good results. I'll come back to that later. Um, so coming back to yeast wrangling, right. Um, oh, sorry, no, still on thiolized yeasts. How do I use it? Well, 100 grams of Cascade in the mash. It's mental, right? In the mash. Cascade has got a load of these precursors in, and there is something about mashing it that exposes more of these precursors. The human race does not fully understand this process. It's safe to say, right? This is all just like people have done experiments and they know that chucking it in the mash does this thing. Nobody has a clue why. It is actually a bizarrely early form of research, like avenue of research. There's my son helping with grain to kind of bring an otherwise boring bullet point to life, which is barley malt bill, no crystal malts, no wheat, no oats, no adjuncts, right? Because those don't contain any of the precursors. And lastly, no dry hopping. So the dry hopping allegedly, and I think I have noticed this is probably true, can strip the thiol aroma compounds out of the beer because you're dry hopping at the end of fermentation. The thiol flavor compounds have already been created. You're then chucking these hops in, which break apart and then sink. And people believe, and I've noticed, that the hops will absorb those flavor compounds, pull them to the bottom of the beer. And just as an amusing side note, this is my single biggest travel hack. You can see there on the right because I just needed a photo. That is a Starbucks fully sealed coffee cup, only available in America, next to a pint of incredibly strong beer. You pour one into the other, and the airlines don't realize you're bringing alcohol on board, and they also don't realize you're drinking it as well. So, a handy hint if anyone's a frequent traveler. So, to wrangle, you need three things, right? Going back to the wrangling, you need three things: cold shipping, sterile propagation, long-term storage. Cold shipping, obviously yeast degrades with heat. You need a way to get it to where you're going to store it without it getting warm, also known as cold chaining. If you're buying it from Sainsbury's, that's a lot easier than if you're getting it from Charlotte, North Carolina. More on that later. Sterile propagation. So you're going to be shipping a small amount by nature. You're going to want to propagate it up. To do this, you need extremely clean wort to grow up the yeast. Otherwise, you're going to be growing up bacteria with it. And then long-term storage. Like if you can't often get yeast, you need a way to keep it so that you can get at it. Unless you're just going to perpetually brew, in which case you're a total legend for keeping yeast alive that long. So, basic process: obtain, pack and ship, propagate and store. So, places you can obtain it, like bottle sediments, pub slants, or just buying it. How do you ship it? Cold freighting, and then what I've called dynamic freight capacity, which is my other biggest travel hack, which is I always carry a 90-liter like packable duffel bag. And 90 liters is an absolute boatload. But it goes down into like something this big, which I got like last year when I went to Australia to go to a conference. And British Airways lost my luggage, so all I had was the clothes I was stood up in to present at the conference in, a lot of which had food poured down them from the flight. But in the process, I had to buy myself a bag, bought myself a foldable duffel bag, and it's bloody incredible because you put all your clothes in the foldable duffel bag and you put the beer in your bag. Genius. And then lastly, propagate and store. So you need to grow it up. You need to have a big, from nothing, you need a big start, and then you need to freeze it. So how does that happen? So places you can get beer from to wrangle. Bottle conditioned beer sediment, a slant in a pub. So I've heard of people doing slants in pubs, like they carry with them like the laboratory grade sterile containers, where it's got like what looks like a cotton wool bud attached to the lid, right? And you can take it out and it comes sterile. Take it out and they wipe it around the bottom of the glass in a tap room, and they'll put it back in and they'll take it home. Mental. I can't believe it works, but people do it. In-person homebrew store, and then an online purchase. So bottle conditioned beer sediment. So I didn't mention this, but I've just thought about it now. So yeast wrangling through bottle conditioned beer has a rich history. And Sierra Nevada and a couple of the West Coast breweries whose names escape me, they got their beer essentially through their house yeast, and potentially Chico through yeast wrangling, because they came to Britain in the 70s. They liked the beer. They bought bottles of beer, including from what is now Fuller's, but used to be a brewery in Petersfield, which is near where I grew up. And then they took it back to America and grew it up from the bottles. So it is a known good way. So like I've got 4 examples for you of doing it from bottles. So Fuller's, I've already mentioned it. It worked really well. I propagated it in 2012. That's a photo of my daughter during COVID emptying the tomatoes in Sainsbury's Camden, which is where I got the beer from. I got 13. I'm at the moment on 13 generations, and I tested it. So I bought a packet of WLP002 because I was worried the yeast was dodgy, and I brewed 2 starters next to each other, and they tasted identical. So after 13 generations of regrowing it, it was fine. Sierra Nevada, this is possible. Haven't tried it. So Sierra Nevada, bottle condition and can condition everything. Bell's Brewery in Michigan, if anyone's familiar with that. I brought some back. That worked really well, very successful. And then Cooper's. I bought a bottle of Cooper's back for Ken because he was trying to brew a Australian sparkling ale. So I picked him one up last week in Australia, and I thought, I know I'll be really clever. So I got one from the airport so that it was cold for longest. Forgot that I was changing planes in Singapore, and the Singaporeans fucking confiscated it. So Ken will not get his Cooper's yeast, but poor Ken. So you can also buy it from a shop. This actually gets really tricky. This gets really tricky because you've got to time everything perfectly. So an example here is I went to Alternative Beverage in Charlotte, North Carolina, to get some of the Omega Labs yeast. It was bloody amazing. It was the first homebrew store in America, pretty much. This old dude had been running it since like 1972. And he had some of this Omega Labs yeast, and I got there, and he said, "Oh yeah, no, I've got some. I've got the last packets." And I was like, "Oh, good." So I bought them, and as I was buying them, he's like, "Yeah, they've stopped selling them at the homebrew scale, and this is the last shipment they did." And as soon as I found out they were doing that they weren't going to sell it homebrew anymore, I got a shipment. So this is the last packets of the last shipment of homebrew sized thiolizable yeast, because Omega Labs, who make it, were sick of large scale brewers buying homebrew packets and then growing it up to the brewery scale to save themselves $500. And then another nice example there is, I'll zoom in a bit because it's all a bit of fun, is that's White Labs in Asheville in North Carolina. It's the only bar I've been to that has a wonderful yeast fridge at the back there, you can see. And then they also, as a small side note, they do something rather lovely, which is they brew the same yeast, the same beers with 2 different yeasts. So you can see here that the beer on the right has been brewed with 840 and 940, and the hazies has been brewed by 666 and 4000. As an interesting side note, as soon as the beers got strong or dark, couldn't tell the difference. I thought that was quite interesting. So I had not this one, but a different one. They had like porters and double stouts and stuff. Couldn't tell. The light beers, and the one on the right was a low strength American light lager. You could tell from 10 feet away that they were different yeasts. As soon as they got strong, made no difference. Yeah, and then lastly, online purchase. That gets really fruity because you've got to time when you're in America with when your yeast will arrive from the homebrew store, and trust that the hotel you're staying in will store it cold. It sort of works, and it worked once. So the first packet of Cosmic Punch, which we'll get onto, I did get that from a hotel who kindly were organising cold storage. So you've then got to ship it. So here's 3 examples. So I'll tell you about them all, and then I'll go into the one on the left. So this is the gritty reality of yeast wrangling. Put up close. No filters. Not like that. Not like Darren's sunset in his conservatory. The one on the left is actually, you can see there the blue on the left of the image. If you can see my that blue is the packets of the thiolized yeast. I was just nervous of taking a photo and putting it on the lab Slack because I am technically importing a genetically modified item allegedly. Well, he neither confirms nor denies it because I understand this is being recorded. And there's some yeast in the bucket. We'll come on to that. This is coming back from Asheville. So I emptied as much of Sierra Nevada brewery as I could. And then this is Louisiana with this beer they only make. It's a small brewery. And they make a thing called Andy Gator, which is not a real thing. It's a Hell's Doppelbock, which obviously isn't an actual style, but it's excellent and will get you wasted. As well as a value pack of Atkins protein bars there, giving you a little window into how I live my life. So how did I get the thing on the left in? So this was the nice man at Asheville. Sorry, not Asheville. The nice man in North Carolina at the homebrew store. He sold me a 1 gallon tub because I was like, shit, how am I going to carry this back? Have you got anything? And he was like, oh, I'll just go out the back and see if I've got something. And he goes out and he comes back and he's got this like 1 gallon tub. And it's so it's got like a tamper-proof seal, which made it watertight. So I then went to a gas station and for like, you know what, America's like everywhere sells ice, right? And then for like $4, bought myself a gallon of ice, crushed, right? So stuffed all the yeast amongst this crushed ice into this thing, stood on the had to stamp on the lid to get it to like to seal. But at that point, it was then completely rock solid. Completely worked. I got back to London. And obviously North Carolina, this was North Carolina in like June, right? So this was sweltering. Got back to London, having put it in my hold luggage, and the ice was still frozen on the inside. You can't beat it. So the yeast was pretty much cold chained all the way, I think. Obviously, if anyone's got any questions or just wants to interrupt my rambling, please jump in. Then second option is a less good choice. So the second option was injury cold packs. So I bought I bought some Cosmic Punch in and got it sent to Dallas as well in like July. I seem to only wrangle yeast in the most difficult environmental conditions, and I got it. I froze it, and I had organized a business trip to go in and out of Dallas to do exactly this. And then asked the hotel to refreeze the freezer bags that it came with, so I could pack it with like the freezer packets it comes with. They then promptly lost the freezer bags, but was so mortified that they'd lost them that they worked out that in all of their first aid kits they had like the emergency ice packs. I don't know if anyone's seen those, which are they're chemically activated ice packs, and they got every chemically activated ice pack in the hotel. And I took all of them and put them in a bag. And astonishingly, the yeast survived, even though I think it was 34 degrees outside, right? And of course, the luggage you're then checking this luggage. It's then going out onto the tarmac, but it handled it. So then, there we are. Okay, so then, right, step 3, propagate and store. So kind of 3 steps that I think are quite important: freeze, aseptic starter, and micro and midi starters. I've forgotten some bullet points there, which is making me feel nauseous on the left. So kind of the basic process I use is I pressure cook the tubes, the test tubes that I store the yeast in. I cook glass pipettes. I bought glass pipettes that I transfer in, and I cook them in a 170-degree oven for 90 minutes, as you can see over here. You then pressure can a 25% water and glycerol mix. So 25% glycerol, 75% water, and then you mix a 50-50 slurry. You mix the glycerol solution and the slurry at a ratio of 50-50. You freeze it overnight in isopropyl alcohol to slow down the freezing process. I don't think that's needed, but I don't have the guts to not. And apparently you can store it for up to 5 years. And you can see down here, I've gone to 7 milliliter test tubes. That's going to last me until I'm dead. I'm going to be passing that stuff down to my kids. So then you need to make an aseptic starter. So I think this bit's really important because if you're just boiling, your stuff can still get through, right? Whereas if you're pressurizing, if you're steam cleaning at pressure or ovening, not a word, then you're pretty confident you've got rid of all residual bacteria. So I pressure can the wort. So this is this photo here at the bottom right, if you can see, and I see it through the magical power of Microsoft. I can zoom in, right? So that's how I can wort. So I'll brew a batch of beer, normally an American light lager. I'll put more malt in than I need, and then I will collect wort straight out the mash, and then I'll can it, and then I'll pressure can it in a pressure cooker. And I've got these nice jars from Wet, which are pretty good. They're 315 milliliters each. Right, then over here you can see that's roughly my setup. So here is where I pressure canned all the Stony Lab test tubes. It's just ran Stony Lab crap off Amazon. This is the glycerol mix that I've already pressure canned. This is the yeast starter that I'm going to use the slurry from. Actually, I'm not even sure why I have that. Oh no, that's a lie. Sorry. This particular batch, I froze about 75% of the yeast, and then 25% of it went in the big starter. And then I've got the massively over specified plumbing blowtorch to sanitize the rim of the pressure cooker if I need, or to sanitize the top of the Erdmeyer flask if I need. So that's one thing. So then what I do is I make micro and midi starters. So I have a jar like this. I'll fill it halfway, pressure can it, and then when I have one of these tiny test tubes, which has probably only got 7 billion cells in, I'll chuck it in one, leave it to grow up to kind of wake up, and then I'll add it to a 2 liter or 1.6 liter stir plate starter, and this generates me a load of cells for the yeast. Jacques, have you got a question, sir?
Yeah, what do you mean by pressure can? You're actually pressurizing it and canning it? I don't quite understand the process there.
Great. So what you do, so these particular jars, right? What you do, they have little clips that you clip onto the lid, and it just holds the lid in place. But the pressure is equal in the jar and out. Otherwise, the lid would just fall off. Right. Then
Oh, I
what you
see.
do
Okay.
is you put the whole thing in the pressure cooker. You turn the pressure cooker on. Because of the pressure, internally it'll get to 121 Celsius, which will kill almost everything.
Yeah.
And then it will boil the contents of the jar, and this area here, the headspace will fill with steam. And then once you stop heating, because of the clips on this jar, it will allow steam out, but not anything in. And then as the steam cools, it will make a negative pressure. It will hold the lid on, and what you've now got is a jar where nothing's got in, but it has reached 121 Celsius.
Right.
And it's a rather elegant design.
Not just sanitized.
It's close to sterile, right? And it's a rather lovely design, these Weck jars by the Germans, because if you haven't been successful, you're storing it at room temperature, you will get growth, right? And the growth will produce gases which will remove the negative pressure, and the lid will pop off. So you can literally you can hold the jar by the lid, and you know that nothing is growing in that in that jar. It's a nice little, very simple but effective design. And these jars at 315 mil happen to fit. I can get, I think, 7 in my Italian pressure cooker from my mother-in-law. You don't require an Italian mother-in-law to do yeast freezing, but it is sometimes helpful.
You can do the same thing with the ball
German
mason
mother-in-laws.
jars.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Or Kilner little jars.
Yes,
They
yes,
do
you
the
absolutely
same as well.
can.
They've got the little pressure top.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah,
So even if you
that
haven't
helps.
tight, you once you put it in the pressure cooker, and you just leave it to cool in the pressure cooker,
Yeah.
and you'll hear it like the lid go ping at some point where it's actually sucked them on and pulled the lid down. So like when you got like a jar of something you buy from the shop, and it says press the top, and if it goes up and down, then it's off. It's the same thing with that basically. So once you've got those lids on, even without the sort of sealing ring tightened on, can hold the thing by the lid and it's never coming off.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what, yeah, and I think this is one of the tricks to it, right? I think if I hadn't worked out how to do this, I think I would struggle with yeast wrangling because I'd be bringing home this lovely magical yeast from America that you can't get, and then adding 0.5% of bacteria to it, and then that just grows up, and then you're fucked. Whereas this way, I'm not certain, but I'm fairly confident that at least in the first step, so going from this test tube into that jar, the kind of what's the word, but like the pathway for contamination is pretty restricted. So yeah, so that seems well, and yeah, so I'll come on. So case study. So where have I used this before? So Cosmic Punch. Look at the foam on that yeast. Look at that. Can you see that? Look at that. That's mental. It looks like Mr. Whippy. It's so weird. I don't know why it does it, but it does. So that is actually going up. That is going gangbusters, that yeast. It was really happy, grown up. And this is an interesting one as well, because going back to the story about Dallas, right? I did all that fuss to get the, I don't want to use the word smuggle, but to import that yeast. And then promptly ignored the yeast for 2 years because I had a baby and I moved house. Got the yeast out 2 years later. It was 2 years after its sell-by date. And jumping back to this method, I had a half jar of sterile wort. I put the yeast in that. I left it. It took about 5 days to show any sign of activity, and then it did show some activity. I then grew it up again in a full jar, and then again in a 2-litre starter. Pitched it in, and I pitched it in, and it absolutely went off like a rocket. Oh, and someone has helpfully, Darren has helpfully put the canning procedure on the Brewlosophy YouTube. Oh, it's also on the YouTube video, but on how they do it.
Yeah, I got a video and then link into various resources for it, and yeah, it's good resource.
It's really helpful. The next step for me, just, I'll tell you all because I've got the floor and my wife is bored of listening to me about it, is getting a bigger pressure cooker. I want to bring back from America, the massive ones that they have, because you can't buy them here. Over there, they're like $120. You can get yourself a fucking monster pressure cooker that's sort of like 34 liters. Because then I can buy the oversized wet jars, right? And I can just pressure can like 1 liter jars. And then making a starter becomes unbelievably easy and cheap. But I think at that point, I'm pretty far up the diminishing return curve at the moment, anyway. So
yeah, I mean, I make concentrated starters where basically there's enough DME dissolved in there that I just dilute it up to 1 liter. But yeah,
that's what I do. I'll make a double.
Yeah, not as sterile as doing a 1 liter and pressure.
Yes,
canning the whole damn lot.
And I actually think it's unnecessary, because I think what I care about the most, what I generally do is when I'm growing up yeast, the initial non-stirred propagation is the one I want to keep sterile. Once it's in the Erdmeyer flask, I accept it's not sterile. Also, because I've got the stir bar in there. If anyone else has got a magnetic stirrer, which is made of plastic, you can't sterilize it. You can only sanitize it. So I actually think, Darren, your method is probably better and doesn't require me to import a pressure canner from pressure cooker from America. Yeah, so that's Cosmic Punch, amazing. So it's very special. The aroma is nuts. It's incredible, and I think the aroma is sustained. So I'm currently drinking, as evidence, not that any of you can smell it, a IPA that I brewed for Lab. Right? Do you remember? You probably don't remember. It wasn't exciting enough, but I managed to pay but not enter Lab, which I think is an impressive achievement. And I brewed it for that, and it still has a strong aroma. And that's, how long ago was Lab? Like 2 months, 3 months, something like that. Yeah. So that I think it is quite special. just for funsies, I've imported WLP 007, which is the Whitbread strain, because I thought it was cool to be able to buy it from White Labs laboratory rather than Malt Miller. It's an absolute monster. I fed it off last week to make a double IPA. It went from 1094 to 8 in 4 days. And at 64 Fahrenheit, which is like 18 degrees, no off flavors. I was going to add some sugar, forgot to add the sugar, put it in, went to bed, got up the next morning, no activity on the airlock, and I was like, oh shit, the yeast has gone dormant because it's flocculated out, and I've now just poured a load of sugar into a beer, and then I did a refractometer test, and it had eaten 1/4 kilo of sugar in less than 10 hours. Really good. It's Stone Brewery's house yeast, for anyone who's interested. Then Bell's Brewery, so that they're amazing. They make Bell's Two Hearted IPA, which is a centennial only IPA. It's incredible. It's like one of my top 5 beers in the world. And they're so good at it. They have agronomists who can predict which fields will have the best centennial hops, and they pay agronomists to only do this. And so there's a theory that you can't actually buy good centennial hops because Bell's have cornered the market, and they can literally be like, that field, we will buy that field off you, farmer, but not the other ones. And they'll buy it while the farmer is planting, which of course the farmer likes for cash flow reasons, and they just clean up. So this is a bottle of Bell's Oberon, which I'm growing up. You can see. Can you see in the photo? Yeah, you should be able to see there. Yeah, you can. Can you see that? You've got yeast. So that's the sediment from the bottle. I think it was from 2 bottles, and then it's growing up the yeast, and you've got a bit there. I don't know what that photo is of the right. And then this is the yeast after a batch, right? So I grew that up to 2 liters, brewed a blonde ale, and then harvested the yeast out of the ale. Sort of evidence that it has generated a boatload of, from a little tiny bit of sediment from America, it has grown a ton of yeast. And then also one thing that I think is very interesting is just like yeast condition. So I think people are a bit precious on yeast condition. So this is sorry, I'm struggling with my computer here. So this is actually an image. This is an image of when I actually got those bottles. So this is a slightly, I don't want to say dodgy, but this is a bottle shop in Pittsburgh, sorry, run by people who definitely do not understand beer. Just to give you context, right? And this Bell's was stored at room temperature. America gets red hot. So you would kind of think, like, I don't know how old it is. I'm not close to the Bell's brewery. I was a bit suspicious that this yeast was gone, right? Because who knows how long it's been on the shelf. It came out like a rocket. So I think the bottles can be quite badly abused before you lose the yeast. And then lastly, is it worth it? No, it's not. Freezing is kind of probably not worth it if you're being rational. Only just, it makes you feel like an absolute boss because you're literally freezing yeast and you're getting yeast out of the freezer and it's still alive and it's fucking badass. But I actually like, I've got so much yeast in my freezer now of like different strains. I kind of think you only need 2, and my 2 are probably going to be 007 and 840 American lager. I think for hazies, the use of cosmic. Oh, James, go ahead, mate.
I was just gonna say, is it worth it? If you enjoy it, then yeah, it's worth it.
For sure. And now we get sucked into the philosophical conversation of, yeah, exactly. So I think you're probably right. So I think it probably is because it does make you feel like a boss. I think if you were just optimizing for like improving the quality output of your beer per unit of effort expended.
I would also say that there are cases like very unique yeast. I mean, before we started this, Jack was talking about the Schneider Weiss yeast that he had got from Ken. So if you want to store that longer term, I've also known people that have got like for particularly for particular British ale strains that aren't commercially available, that they've gone to a pub and taken a sample from the pint that they've been given and then taken it home in their own sort of home yeast lab, slanted it out, and then
Yeah.
grown it up, frozen it and everything. So they've got that yeast now forever where they can't you can't buy it. So there's definitely unique strains, unique cases that you might want to do this for.
Yeah, I absolutely think there are. I think there are,
But
and it makes you feel like a boss.
it's not going to make your beer automatically better. But
No. But now I've kind of got into a routine with it. It's pretty good, right? It also takes a load of fuss out of the system because I travel with work a lot. So if I'm getting a delivery from online of beer stuff and I've got a packet of yeast in there, you worry that the yeast's going to get cooked and you're going to not have decent. Whereas this way, I know that I've got good yeast in my freezer. The starters are a bit of a pain. Right, you've got to time it, you've got to be organized. And then lastly, overall yeast wrangling, so like sourcing, importing, propagating, freezing. Is it worth it? I think it is. Sometimes it is. If you're on business, why not? You've got nothing else to do. You might as well go on weird detours to source some weird yeast. Waiting for a bag is a pain when you come back to Heathrow, especially if they lose it, but it's not the end of the world. The thiolized yeast are impressive. Like it's not my thing. I'm not into New England IPAs, but they are impressive. They are able to deliver a depth of flavor, and two of the best received beers I made, I brought to lab. Sorry, two of the five. Sorry, I'm going to start the sentence again. Jesus. Of the top 5 beers that I brought to lab, and I mean as in the ones that everybody liked, 2 of those were made with thiolized yeast, and I would say were made with thiolized yeast where I hadn't really zeroed in the recipe. I just chucked a lot of stuff in a bucket, and they are impressive. The pale ale I made a couple of months ago with one of the thiolized yeasts, people could not believe that it wasn't dry hopped, right? And it is an impressive thing. And I also made a double IPA with aforementioned thiolized yeast, and it does give it a depth that you otherwise don't have. And I joined a webcast with Mitch Steele, the previous head brewer of Stone Brewing, who's opened his own brewery, and he was talking incredibly enthusiastically about not Cosmic Punch, but one called Star Party, which is a thiolized version of Chico. So there we go. Joe, mate, you got a question or a comment?
Yeah, so overall you use less hops then in the beer because you're not dry hopping, or are you using more hops in the whirlpool, or have you chucked 100 grams in
Yeah,
the
exactly.
mash?
Yeah, that's it. So any economic saving is instantly obliterated by the 100 grams of hops thrown into the mash.
Yeah.
So I think you can play games with it. I bet you could not chuck them in at the mash and you could get them in other places, right? A lot of the thiol precursors exist in the malt.
And have you tried adding, is it must, the wine stuff?
I haven't, because it has had mixed. It has, in theory, it works, and I think Omega and somebody else published lab level data saying it works. I've then seen people try kind of field experiments and have not had massive success. But you can do it. Yeah, it gets expensive as well buying old grapes.
I could probably talk a bit about my experience because
Yes.
Lawrence, I think you gave me a vial of thiolized yeast wrangled. When was it? About 9 months ago, almost a year ago now. It all started also from another beer you brought in, which was cold chained, one of Scott Janish's hazies. And after that, I looked at a Scott Janish podcast and I was really interested in what they were doing, like dry hopping at 1 degree Celsius and
Yep.
adding pomegranate powder to the mash to stop ion extraction that leaves your hop flavor in the beer for longer, which is really interesting in itself. And the other one was thiolized yeast. So then when you said you had some, I was like, yeah, okay, I got to try this. The first batch I made was with Centennial mash hopping. And I would say it was like so fruity that it was almost plastic. I think there's a sort of flavored aroma threshold where if it's too much, it actually seems plastic. And I think that's what happened. So I actually threw that out, but kept and then just brewed another batch using Cascade this time and put it on top of that. And that was way better. And I've still got bottles of that, and that's probably a few months old already, and so on. And then the next two batches I made were IPAs, and then I only learned recently that you shouldn't dry hop. So I probably ruined the whole thing by dry hopping with it. But there was still that second batch, which I think sort of hit the spot. I've also heard that Zos is also a really good hops. Not just you don't think of Zos as a fruity hops, but it's actually got a lot of precursor thiols which can be released by these yeasts. I've also read that
It's actually the best one, I think, Jacques. It's like the SARS
right.
is like the most intense. I just didn't want to buy a whole packet, so I used Cascade. But
Ah,
yes, SARS is supposed to be the best.
okay. I've also I've also read that it's not like a yeast is stylized or not. There's a sense of degree to it. There's some that are slightly thiolized and others more. It depends on which precursors it can actually free and others not. So the flavors and aromas you'll get from one thiolized yeast is very different. And the one might seem extreme and where the other one hardly has any effect. So it's actually which thiolized yeast matters. It's not like it is or it isn't, which is interesting in itself. And I've seen there's some thiolized yeast you can buy here in the UK now, which they found naturally. The multimiller, if you do a search for thiolized yeast, which I did a while ago, I have to check it again. But they're not GM and they don't have nearly the degree of the thiolized yeast you get from the States.
I think I used
Um,
Hemlock once, but I also mixed it with Verdant, so I didn't know if that was a good thing to do or not. But I was like, one packet of this Hop and Lock is not going to go far enough for this beer, so I mixed the two together.
hmm. I think James has a comment.
Yeah, well, I think yeah, there's several have the style releasing yeast, and like you said, it's not the same, not as powerful as the genetically modified one. So I'm all in favor of the genetic modification, but I suspect they won't they're going to prioritize it more for food security than giving us extra fruity beer. Um, I was going to actually ask, has anyone used Phantasm, the sort of thiol powder that I
Yeah, but
think is
that's the
basically,
must. Yeah, that's what
yeah, that's
Joe was talking about. Sorry, go on.
powdered grape skin, isn't it? So I just
So
wonder like what success people had with it and what amount they used and that sort of thing.
I've not. Have you used it, and how does one use it?
No, I've not used it. That's why I was asking. I'm
Uh,
interested.
So it's basically the grapes, as you would right if you wind back, right. So the thiolization started with Sauvignon Blanc yeast, and the grapes have got loads of precursors in, as you might expect, right, which the yeast converts into all these lovely flavors, so that the New Zealanders cannot bother to do good agronomy with their grapes, right. And you can buy the I think it's once they've pressed the white wine grapes, they pulverize it and put it in a can. And you can buy it and chuck it in your beer in the hope that it increases the amount of thiol precursors. Now, from the analysis I've seen, like you've got so many precursors in barley, and with a bit of SARS in your mash, it's probably not worth it for the unbelievably expensive effort of doing that. If you live in New Zealand next to a winery and they're otherwise going to throw it in the bin, you probably might as well chuck it in your beer, right? But for the cost, I looked at it; it was a fortune to buy this stuff, and I was like, bugger that.
Yeah, I mean it's again, I mean I've got no point of reference to know like is it expensive? And it's like 50 grams for £5.75. Well, there's a few hops that are pretty much that expensive these days.
Yeah, and I'd rather put the
Um,
hops in.
yeah, so but I didn't know like yeah how much it is that sort of thing. Because it's powdered extract derived from Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc grapes.
Yeah, I think it's a con. And Scott Yanish did some experiments and found he didn't get a great outcome with it. And it sort of matches what I've experienced right now. And I think a bit what Jacques experienced. I think Jacques maybe was too successful in his thiol foray, and it doesn't need it. And this is just a bit interesting on, I think, can you see the getting started with thiolized stress? So you see on the right here, this is Omega Labs, and they've made multiple thiolized versions. So Cosmic Punch is based on London Ale. They call it London Ale 5, but I think White Labs call it London Ale 3. It's like the Boddington's strain that all the New England IPAs are made of. And then Lunar Crush, I haven't tried. I bought this one as well because obviously, if the guy in the shop says you can't buy this anymore, you're obviously going to buy it. And so I did. It's probably made all that up, and it was just a con to sell me more yeast. I don't know why you would want the thiolized lager yeast. It sounds ridiculous. I don't know why you'd ever want it. I don't know. I think I'm never going to use it. I'm going to use it once and be like, that is a weird tasting beer. Star Party is Chico. I've tried that out. Works nicely. And then Heliogazer is like another level of genetic modification, right? So I think they got better at isolating the genes, and they claim that the thiol conversion power is 200 more than Cosmic Punch. So that'll be an interesting foray when I start that. And then also for your interest, I don't know if you can see my screen well enough, but this is White Labs' analysis of their existing yeast and looking at what yeasts have thiol conversion capability. And this is what I said earlier. If you can see my screen, I think it's super weird because this guy here, that's German lager yeast. 830 is a German lager yeast. So weird. And I can't remember what 300 is. And so what they've now done is they've tried to interbreed. I think it's these two.
300's a Hefeweizen yeast, like the standard one.
Oh,
No, that's 400 on that chart, not 300.
No, 4. So this is 300. You're right.
Oh, sorry, it's 300. Yeah, 300. Yeah.
So I think they've started playing around and trying to breed the yeast or something. But it's super weird.
So when they say that 830 is actively is able to do that, why? I'm confused as to why. Is that if you don't use it cold as a lager yeast? Is that if you're using it warm, or is that because presumably plenty of lagers have SARS in them, so why are they not tropical lager bombs?
But not in the mash.
Fair enough. So if you mash hopped with 830, you would expect something else.
Yeah.
They recommend 20 IBUs is the sort of sweet spot. Whereas if you mash hop, then you need about 3.5 times the hops as if you would do a 60-minute addition. So calculate your IBU as if you're doing a 60-minute addition, what you would need for 20 IBUs, multiply by 3.5, and that's what you add in the mash. Because they say too much hops in the mash actually has a negative effect, and 20 IBUs mash hopping is around about what you're looking for as the sort of most you want. Maybe you want to go a bit lower than that the first time, I don't know. Yeah, but that's a lot of hops. It's like 100 gram, like Laurence says. Yeah.
And then what does the rest of the hop schedule look like after that? I mean, if you're not doing dry hopping, so you're saving opening the fermenter.
Yeah, I mean, so I did everything else as you would expect from a New England IPA, like so, uh, uh, incremental boil additions and a whirlpool. Yeah, and when I first used it, I don't drink wine very much, and we went to a neighbour's house, and their favourite wine is Sauvignon Blanc, and I happened to be brewing with this yeast at the same time, and I didn't really know what Sauvignon Blanc smelt like because I don't drink wine. I drank a couple of pints of Sauvignon Blanc at their house, and then 2 days later went into the room where I was fermenting, and it smelled exactly like their wine smelled. It's quite amazing.
Fascinating. That's a really fascinating presentation. Thanks, Lauren.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm also just looking at this and just thinking out loud, like it's interesting here, right? You see these guys, right? And that kind of roughly aligns with what you would expect, right? 0.7 and 0.2, which are Fullers and Whitbreads, like almost like zero fireizing capabilities, no tropical anything. And like 0.2 is what you make London Pride with, and 0.7 is what you make resiny West Coast IPAs with. Right, and then 0.01 is Chico, which is a bit more fruity, right? Think about the types of beer you're making with 0.01. It's not as resiny. You would use it on a broader spectrum, like citra heavy fruity hops would go into that, and it feels like it roughly maps with what you might expect. Yeah.
Are you using whole hops in the mash, Laurence?
No, pellet, only pellet.
And do you bag your pellets?
Sorry, saying?
Do you bag your pellets?
So it's a good, interesting point. So we're about to enter our second purge at 30 Crockerton Road of hops because last week, so it's happened twice to me. It's ridiculous. So 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, I made a beer, and Rich, who's got a very good nose, was like, "I think your hops are off." And the beer you made last month, I think the hops were off. I think you've got a hop storage issue. And so I went home and got my wife, because women have better sense of smell, to smell all the hops. And she was like, "I don't know what I'm tasting. I don't know what I'm smelling for. What do you expect me to tell you? I don't know what hops smell like." And I was like, "It's like a cheesy smell." And I opened a new bag of hops and was like, "That's what good smells like." And then I had like 8 kilos of hops on the island unit in the kitchen. And she just sat there and went, bin, 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 bin. The whole lot went. I think I threw like 6.5 kilos of hops. Like it's like 240 quid worth of hops just went in the bin. And then Rich the other day was like, I think these hops are off, mate." I'm like, "You're fucking kidding." And so we did another purge because I don't vacuum pack my hops, but I will now do, and I bought myself some small vacuum pack ones.
Do you freeze them?
Yes. So Yakima Valley officially said you do not need to vacuum pack them. You can just like put them back in the bag, close the bag, and put them in the freezer, and they'll be all right. And that is false. You need to vacuum. You need to individually seal the hops. And point one. And then the other thing that was interesting is in our experiment to find hops and chuck them out this time, far better test than the smell is how they feel. So the hops that were off were dry and they did not break very easily. The hops that were happy, you could put them between your finger and you could squeeze them, and they would deform eventually into a mush. Whereas the hops that were gone, you would squeeze them and they might break, but they wouldn't become a mush because they had dried out.
Because I've definitely so some of the sort of hops I've got, I store them in a fridge, and they are vac packed. But there's definitely some significant degradation on them.
Yeah, I think you've got to freeze them.
Yeah, I think you've got to do both ideally, because
Yes, you've
there's
definitely
definitely a case that below, like, yeah, 5 degrees does not significantly slow degradation down for a lot of foodstuffs
Yeah.
beyond like a few days.
Yes.
So unless you are going, yeah, -20,
It's every 10 degrees roughly it
yeah,
halves. And when I went to the or did the webcast with Mitch Steele, I took the opportunity to explain in detail my dry hopping procedure to try to, because I wasn't getting the dry hop aroma. So I explained the dry hopping procedure, and I close transfer, and I have a chamber and a valve, and he was like, "You're great, no problem, go for it." Right. And this is the guy that invented Stone IPA, so I'm going to take his word as gospel. But then I also explained how I store the hops, and he was like, "No, you need to vacuum pack them. Once you vacuum pack them and freeze them, they'll last forever. But you do need to vacuum pack them."
Yeah, I've found the similar thing with freezing hops on occasions where I haven't resealed them. I had some last week, some Mosaic, which was cheesy, and I store mine at -18 in an industrial freezer. So,
oh wow.
And the ones I vacuum pack are fine if I split them up into 400 grams or whatever the size of the bag is. But no, I did notice last week that a couple of beers I've done recently, and I think it's a dodgy batch of it's from some Mosaic that I didn't store properly, and that was just not resealing it, for over a month or two.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I used to, as per Yakima Valley's instructions, I used to not reseal them for years, and so I think that was a big part of it.
I think also it depends on where you're going to use them. So in Janish's book, I think maybe Jack, you can remember better than me, but he has a section on using cheesy hops. I'm sure it's like in the mash. I'm sure it's early on.
Yes,
he reckons they're more potent for producing. I don't know whether it's thiols or fruity flavors or whatever, but yeah, generally, my take on it is I save my newest, stinkiest, greasiest hops for the dry hop, and then kind of work backwards. And by the time I get to bittering, I'm pretty relaxed about what goes in there. Actually,
I think that's wise.
But when I was asking about the bagging in the mash hopping, because I do quite a bit of mash hopping, but I only tend to use whole hops. And I'd read that for pellet hops, it's worth bagging them, because otherwise the carryover into the boil of pellet particles can give you a much, much higher. I mean, obviously you can tune it afterwards, I guess, but can give you a much, much higher IBU. Whereas if they're bagged, you don't get the carryover like you wouldn't with whole cones as well. And what you can do is then take out the bag and actually then use them in the boil, if so, the whole bag, so that they needn't go to waste. But yeah,
I would, in the spirit of advancing our understanding, I'm not sure how that would work, because I think the filter bed of the grain offers a finer filtration than a mesh bag.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Because I had a load of hops come out, and I lost them in today I was brewing, and they came out of the hop spider that I had, and it's incredibly fine.
Yeah.
And the muslin bags wouldn't have protected it, wouldn't have caught it. But it's also not going to do any harm either. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so, and I've not used any of the thiolized yeasts or even done that much reading on them particularly, only because I didn't brew that many hazies. Are they only, I mean, I saw the wacky lager one, but are they effectively all these flavors? Presumably, these are all hazy flavors. What would they make a West Coast taste like? Or would you struggle then to balance the?
Yeah, well, actually, so of these guys down here, right? So this is the big four they do.
Yeah.
The Cosmic Punch is a Boddington's, but Star Party is Chico, and it's actually the Star Party that Mitch Steele called out explicitly in his webcast in his new brewery and was like, I fucking love that shit. He did then say the only problem is the consumers don't understand what it is because it's a weird. And he was like, that's the problem. Is like he says it's delicious, but they're like, what is this? Is it a West Coast that's dry, or is it like a fruity hazy? Because it tastes like both. What the fuck? So you know.
Okay. So but effectively, it gives you those passion fruit, those very overly ripe fruit flavors in whatever beer you put it in.
You chuck it in, yeah. Like and one of those, a lager is going to be mental with that stuff. It's going to be like the weirdest drink anyone's ever had.
Yeah. Wow. Maybe you should be doing the Christmas beers with them, Jack.
Yeah.
Everyone uses a thiolized yeast to produce a Christmas beer. See if you can stomach it.
While I'm here and while I've got the floor, would anybody like to see the photos of the Sierra Nevada Brewery in Asheville?
Of course.
Yeah, go on, let's do it.
Yeah.
That'd be
Okay.
good.
Thought it might be a nice thing to. Give me 30 seconds.
Laurence,
Yes.
when the pictures you showed of it looked like a rucksack with a bit of bubble wrap and about
Yeah, that's a good
30 bottles of
description.
beer.
Yeah, that's it.
And that makes it through being tossed around by baggage handlers.
Well, no, that's why I always, before I send it, Joe, you'll notice if you're paying attention, I always put on the Slack a photo of it and then write, everyone please pray for the baggage handlers. And so the times when everyone did pray, it was fine. And the times when everyone didn't, it wasn't.
Oh, so it's us then.
Yeah, it's on you lot. That's the problem. So, I mean, it varies, right? So this guy, well, yeah, let's see if I can get the zoom up quick enough. So this one where I got the bubble wrap, this was fine. It all survived. It's quite amazing. The trick is the sides, right? So the corners are where it's going to break. If you can protect the corners, you'll be okay. And then photo of my wife, and then see if I can find the Australia picture. No, I can't. Sorry, I can't find it. There it is. And that's Australia. Right, and actually clothes around the outside, it was absolutely fine. So Asheville. Oh, sorry, it's not coming up as Asheville. I now need to put 18th of June. Cool. So I went to Asheville because I had to go to America, and I just give you context to bring the story to life for you all. I had a meeting on the Monday in America and a meeting on the Friday in America, and I had 3 other meetings in America, which were all perfectly aligned to make one big trip. And then very, very quickly, the 3 meetings in the middle got cancelled. So I had nothing to do in America, but couldn't come home. And so I had a choice of either killing 3 days in Houston or killing 3 days in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I remember my parents told me that Asheville is really nice, so I decided to go to Asheville, not realizing that it is the beer capital of North America. So it was a joyful experience. And went to the Sierra Nevada Brewery. That's me. I took a photo of the Meaning of Beer book because I finished it at the moment. But it is quite spectacular. It's like a cathedral. It's quite amazing. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like probably the midpoint between a cathedral and a factory. And this is their hop room. So that is, I'm told, less than half a day's worth of Cascade that they get through there. It's a monumental amount, and the smell is quite spectacular. It's all whole hops, no pellets. There we go. That's Centennial and Cascade, and a shovel. I just found the idea of shoveling hops quite astonishing. And the smell is unbelievable. They buy them straight from the farmers. They freeze them on site. They control the whole supply chain. And just, I don't know why, but I'll say beautiful flooring. Look at that flooring. I mean, it's basically a factory, and the effort they've gone to, it's just beautiful. And then this, once it loads, there's a batch actually getting produced in the boil. but you can get pretty close. And then that's the main brewery that produces essentially for the eastern seaboard of North America. And they've sunk them 2.5 stories down, and clad them in copper. It just looks absolutely beautiful. And here there you can see in the green buckets the hops ready to go in. And they let members of the public walk around, right? They've designed it so it's intrinsically safe, so that you can see what's going on. And there it is. Look at that cathedral. And that I snuck my head around a corner. That is a hop rocket. So that's they invented hop backs and hop rockets in the 90s. That is one of them in action. And there's a lot of stainless steel, as is traditional with a large operational brewery. And that's just a picture of an alleyway. And that's their packaging line, which is dramatically over-specified. So much so they only run it 3 days a week because the packaging line can't keep up with the brewery. And this is their sort of visitor corridor, and they've got all the stuff from the interesting stuff from their past in the cabinets on the left and right. And that's just an amusing picture I saw in Nashville. And there we go. It's a rather lovely place to visit. It's like a National Trust property, really, that makes spectacular beer.
Has anyone else been to Asheville? No.
Many, many years ago, when I used to do touring, done gigs in Asheville and lots of places in North Carolina, actually.
We've been a few times now. Whenever if we were in the South America or even in New York, to be fair, we tend to just jump and get a flight down to Charlotte and then go to Asheville for a few days. It's one of our, it's just the beer scene there is just amazing. It's just like half of it is university town, the other half is the old industry. The old industry's gone and it's just been replaced with brewery after brewery after brewery. It's just, it is truly something else.
Yeah, I really liked it. It was a very nice. I don't think I've got any other relevant pictures for you, other than my children. Yeah, very, very, very good. Very good place to visit for a turbo beer geek.
The Y Yeast 1056, that's Sierra Nevada, isn't it? It's like one of the packs you get, and it's always like already going, even though it's in a yeast pack. It's one of the most lively yeasts I've found. In any case, typical West Coast yeast is Sierra Nevada. It's really clean. Okay, thank you, Laurence.
Pleasure.
Where we all clapped. That was really, really good and interesting.
Was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
Yeah, it's a shame more of those stylized yeasts aren't available, even just to play with. Even if you weren't going to do loads of brews with them, it'd be interesting to try them out. It's a shame they're not available.
There's some other GM yeasts where I've heard they took a Hefeweizen yeast and they removed the part that creates the cloves. So you just get the banana. But you can't get that here either. So we need people like Laurence to fly over and wrangle it.
When you say you can't get them, Malt Miller have got some thiolites, but are you talking about GM relations, right?
Not the GM stuff. Yeah, and it's not as strong as the GM stuff. Yeah. But it's worth playing around with that.
It's when we all start growing third breasts, you need to worry.
Oh, that's what it is.
We call it brewer's teats.
Careful, Joe, you'll get thrown out of that cozy local of yours.
It's all right. It's not a Sam Smith's.
Yeah.
Laurence has disappeared.
Yeah, well, give him my thanks when he comes back. I'm going to drop off now, folks. Good to catch up, and I'll see you all soon.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Stuart.
Yeah, I'm going to make a move too, chaps. So, yeah, I will see you next month. What was October again? Remind me.
In person. Oh, the online one is Lithuanian beer. I'm
Oh,
gonna
great. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood that, Zhang. I thought that was going to be the in person. I was going to ask you why we weren't going to be treated to your Lithuanian encyclopedic knowledge.
I have brought some of my Lithuanian experiments in person, but I'll talk about everything
Cool.
next month.
Is that like the oven roasted beers?
Yeah, the oven roasted beers and the stone beer. So we'll talk about that, and also the Lithuanian beer scene. No spoilers for now.
Look forward to it. Thanks very much, Laurence. That was great. Very interesting.
Brilliant. Thank you, mate.
Pleasure.
Right, I'm going to shoot as well. Thank you, Laurence.
Right. See you, everyone. Have a nice 2 weeks.
See you all later. Bye now.
See you all later. Bye.
I'm also going to be off. Thank you, everyone. See you in person or next month.
Cheers.
Yeah.
See you later, guys.
All right.